Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. This time, we're going to explore this really provocative idea.
Oh, yeah.
What if, everything we just kind of take for granted, literally everything, from our morning coffee
Right.
to these devices that we're using to record and listen to this right now,
Yeah.
what if all this stuff is a result of war?
Mm.
And get this, the source we're looking at, it's called The History of War. Humans Never Learn.
Okay.
And it claims that all that boils down to one thing.
Okay, what's that? Ego. Ego. Huh, that's a bold claim.
I know, right?
It is. It really is.
To say that ego is like the driving force behind every conflict throughout human history
Yeah.
kind of makes you look at things a little differently.
It really does. It's fascinating and honestly a bit unsettling.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
So how does this source back this up? Where does this whole ego war connection even begin?
Well, the book, it takes us way back to the very beginning.
Yeah.
The earliest forms of conflict,
Right.
Think hunter-gatherer society.
Skirmishes over resources, just the basic struggle for survival.
Yeah, okay.
Those primal instincts,
Right.
The need to protect ourselves and our tribes, well, that's where the seeds of all this ego-driven conflict are sown.
So we're talking, basic survival instincts here.
Exactly.
The fight-or-flight response kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
But here's where things get interesting.
Okay.
As civilizations started emerging, societies became more complex.
Right.
Well, the nature of the conflict, it evolved too.
Okay.
It wasn't just about basic survival anymore, you see.
Right.
It became about power, territory, dominance.
So we basically leveled up from fighting for food to fighting for, bragging rights.
You could say that, yeah.
Okay.
The source, it argues that this was a real turning point.
Right.
The ego, that primal need for self-preservation, it morphed into something way more complex.
Okay.
A desire for recognition, status, control.
And unfortunately, war, it became the ultimate arena for all these ego battles to play out.
And let's be honest, history is just jam-packed with examples of leaders with these massive egos just clashing with each other.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, from Alexander the Great's, just relentless pursuit of conquest
Right.
to Napoleon's ambition to just reshape Europe. I mean, history's full of it.
Yeah.
Leaders driven by this thirst for power and glory.
And, of course, it's always the everyday people that pay the price.
It is, sadly.
Right.
Yeah, while kings and emperors wage their wars to satisfy their egos.
Right.
It's the soldiers on the ground, the civilians caught in the crossfire. They bear the true cost.
Yeah, it's just this tragic cycle.
Yeah.
Ego drives conflict,
Mhm.
conflict leads to suffering, and we never seem to learn.
Never seem to learn.
Right.
The source, it argues that this cycle is just deeply embedded in, our collective psyche.
Oh, wow.
War, despite all the horrific consequences.
Yeah.
It's become normalized throughout human history. Almost like we're conditioned to accept it as just an inevitable part of being human.
Okay, that's pretty heavy.
It is.
But if ego is at the root of war, does that mean we're all doomed to repeat this forever? Is there any hope of breaking free from this?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And the answer, it might actually surprise you.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
Lay it on me.
The source proposes a radical idea.
Okay.
Imagine a world where we declare war on war itself.
Whoa.
Not through violence,
Okay.
but through a fundamental shift in our thinking.
Okay.
What if we challenge the very idea that war is inevitable?
Okay.
That it's somehow woven into who we are?
So instead of fighting each other, we fight the idea of fighting itself.
Exactly.
Okay, but how does that even work?
Well, it starts by recognizing the patterns, you see.
Okay.
Understanding how ego shows itself in our own lives and on a global scale.
Okay.
The book, it dives into something called the ego chain reaction.
Hmm.
And this is where things get really interesting.
Okay, let's break this down.
Right.
What is this ego chain reaction?
Yeah.
And how does it lead to conflict?
Okay, so the ego chain reaction, it's this really fascinating concept.
Okay.
It explains how even small ego-driven actions, they can escalate into huge conflicts.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Walk me through it.
Okay.
How does this chain reaction actually work?
All right, picture this.
Okay.
You got a leader
Okay.
on the world stage. They're feeling threatened or disrespected.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a perceived insult,
Right.
a challenge to their authority.
Hmm.
Maybe even just a bad tweet.
Oh, wow. Yeah, those can be brutal.
Oh, they can be.
Okay, so their ego takes a hit.
Right.
They can't just let that slide?
No way. They got to reassert dominance,
Right.
project strength.
Yeah.
and save face.
Right.
So what do? They overcompensate.
Okay.
And often with aggression.
Okay, so what, like military posturing?
Yeah, military posture.
Yeah. Economic sanctions, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Economic sanctions, maybe even, launching a preemptive strike.
And that, of course, just provokes a reaction from the other side.
Of course.
Right, like now their ego is wounded.
Right.
They feel the need to retaliate.
Yeah.
The cycle just keeps going.
And it keeps escalating.
Yeah.
The source argues that this pattern, it just keeps repeating itself throughout history, from ancient rivalries to modern-day geopolitical tensions.
It's a scary thought.
It is. It's this dangerous feedback loop.
Right.
Where ego fuels aggression, aggression fuels more ego, and in the end, nobody wins.
And the worst part is it's not just the leaders who get caught in this whole mess.
It's not, no.
Why?
The source makes this really powerful point.
Okay.
While the leaders, they might initiate these conflicts, it's the everyday people who suffer the consequences.
It is.
The soldiers sent to fight battles they don't believe in.
Right.
Families torn apart, entire communities just, devastated.
Yeah, it's like this massive ripple effect.
It is.
The ego-driven actions of just a handful of people can have devastating consequences for millions.
Exactly. And it's not just the immediate impact of war that we have to think about.
Right.
The source also digs into the long-term consequences, the psychological scars, economic devastation, the erosion of trust between nations.
Yeah, it's hard to bounce back from that.
It is. The damage can take generations to heal.
Okay, so big question.
Yeah.
How do we break this cycle?
Right.
Because it feels like we're talking about something that's just like built into us.
It's a tough one.
Human nature.
It's a challenge, but the source, it offers some interesting solutions.
Okay.
Remember, the core problem isn't war itself.
Oh.
It's ego.
Right.
So if we can figure out how to deal with the ego problem, maybe we can dismantle this whole war machine from within.
That makes sense. But how do we actually do that? How do we combat ego on a global scale?
Well, the book suggests starting by debunking some of the myths about war.
Okay, like what?
One big one is that war is inevitable.
Right.
That it's just a natural part of being human, part of the human condition.
We're a warring species, right? It's in our DNA, that's what people say.
Exactly. But the source argues that that's a really dangerous misconception.
Okay.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, you see. If we believe that war is inevitable, then we won't try to find peaceful solutions.
Yeah.
We're less likely to challenge the status quo.
So, step one, change our mindset.
Right.
Reject the idea that war is the only way.
Exactly.
Okay, but what about the practical stuff? What about the economics?
Right.
The politics that drive these conflicts?
That's where things get really interesting. Remember that statistic we mentioned earlier?
Yeah, the $400 billion global arms trade.
That's the one.
Yeah, it's hard to forget a number like that.
It's crazy.
It's just mind-boggling how much money goes into weapons and military tech.
It is, and the source argues that this whole economic engine, it's a huge obstacle to peace.
Okay.
You've got whole industries, countless jobs that depend on conflict continuing.
So it's not just about changing hearts and minds.
Yeah.
It's about tackling these big, powerful economic interests.
Exactly, and the source, it suggests that we need to start asking some uncomfortable questions.
Like what kind of question?
Like who profits from war?
Right.
Whose interests are really being served here?
Okay, so follow the money, expose the hidden agendas, and challenge the whole system that just perpetuates this war for profit.
Exactly.
But that feels like a pretty daunting task.
It is, but here's where things get a bit more hopeful.
Okay.
The source argues that we already have what we need to build a more peaceful world.
Okay.
You just got to repurpose it.
Repurpose? What do you mean?
Okay, think about it.
Okay.
All the ingenuity, the resources, the collaboration that goes into waging war, what if we took all that energy and redirected it towards solving some of our big global challenges?
So instead of fighting each other, we join forces to fight things like poverty and climate change, disease, things like that.
Exactly. Imagine the brightest minds, the most cutting-edge tech.
Yeah.
All focused on making lives better.
Instead of destroying them.
Right.
That's a powerful thought.
It is. It's a vision that requires a real shift in priorities.
Okay.
A recognition that we're all connected, that our shared humanity, it's bigger than our differences.
I like that.
And that's where you, the listener, you come in.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that.
Oh, yeah.
I like where this is going. You're about to give our listeners a call to action.
I am.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right.
What can our listeners do to actually make a difference?
Right.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by all of this.
It's true. These are big challenges.
Yeah.
But, every movement, it starts with individual action.
Right.
And the source, it actually offers this really simple, quick win tip.
I love quick wins.
Right.
Especially when it comes to something this complicated.
Yeah. Especially.
Preventing war.
Exactly. So it boils down to this.
Okay.
Be an informed citizen.
Okay.
Don't just accept whatever narratives you're given,
Right.
especially when it comes to, issues of war and peace.
So, question everything.
Exactly.
Don't take anything at face value.
Dig deeper, do your research,
Okay.
form your own conclusions,
Yeah.
and most importantly, hold those in power accountable.
Especially those who are, ready to beat the drums of war at any moment.
Exactly. The next time you hear a politician talking about military action,
Right.
ask yourself, what's really motivating them?
Okay.
Who's actually going to benefit from this?
Right.
Are there other options?
Yeah.
Solutions that prioritize, diplomacy and peace?
Because like we've been talking about, there's always somebody who profits from war.
Oh.
And it's almost never the people who are actually doing the fighting.
That's why it's so important to,
Yeah.
to be critical consumers of information.
Okay.
Challenge those narratives that just perpetuate these conflicts.
Right.
And listen to the voices of peace.
Yeah, but questioning those in power, I don't know, it can feel kind of intimidating.
It can.
Where do we even start?
But remember, you're not alone in this.
Okay.
There are so many organizations and individuals
Right.
working to promote peace and understanding. Do
Yeah.
some research.
Okay.
Find a cause you care about and get involved.
So it's not just about what we think, it's about what we actually do.
Exactly.
It's about taking action,
Yes.
speaking up, and supporting those who are working for a better future.
Exactly. And remember,
Yeah.
even small actions can make a difference.
Okay.
Share information with people.
Right.
Talk to people who disagree with you.
Yeah.
Support leaders who actually care about peace and diplomacy.
Yeah, it's like we're planting these seeds of peace.
Sure is.
One conversation, one action at a time.
It is.
And hopefully those seeds will grow into something really amazing.
That's a great way to put it. And here's a thought to leave you with.
Okay.
What if we celebrated peacemakers
Okay.
with the same energy and passion that we celebrate, warriors?
Instead of glorifying violence,
Right.
we teach our kids about empathy
Exactly.
and how to resolve conflicts peacefully.
What if we put all our resources, all our ingenuity
Yeah.
into building a future where war is just impossible?
That's a future I want to help build.
It is.
So to all our listeners out there,
Yeah.
we challenge you to join us on this journey.
Come on.
Challenge your assumptions.
Right.
Question the narratives you're given.
Yes.
And take action to build a more peaceful world.
Remember, we all have the power to change the world.
Yes, we do.
Let's choose peace, not ego.
That's it for this deep dive into the ego-driven history of war. We hope you learned something new.
I hope so.
That you'll think differently about these issues.
Absolutely.
Challenge the status quo.
Yeah.
And maybe even become a champion for peace.
In your own way.
Exactly. Until next time.
Keep diving.
Keep diving deep.